Okay, well, I guess I can introduce myself. I'm Kyla Thomas. I'm a sociologist at Caesar, and I'm the director of LABarometer, which is what I'll be presenting on today. So LABarometer is one of the UAS's longitudinal survey efforts. And as the name suggests, it is focused on Los Angeles County. Okay, well, I guess I'll just give you a little bit of background on the panel. So LABarometer, the LABarometer panel is a subpanel of the UAS. It's comprised of about 1,800 adults living in Los Angeles County. And so it started as a very small oversample of LA County residents within the UAS. I think when I started at USC, it was like 500 or 600 people that had been oversampled for a particular study of LA. And in 2018, we decided that we wanted to grow this oversample so that we could do some more survey work looking specifically at LA, since we're situated in LA and we wanted to kind of do more work that would benefit the city and county that we live in. So in 2018 to 2019, we grew this oversample to about 1,800 adults, and our kind of goal for, I think by year end, we're trying to grow to about 2,300 LA County residents. So that's a pretty significant subpanel. Okay. So because we're a subpanel of the UAS, all of our sampling, recruitment, retainment procedures follow UAS procedures. The bulk of our panel was recruited through target sampling of the LA County population, so about 90%. All of our surveys are conducted in English and Spanish, and internet tablets are provided to respondents who don't have access to internet. And so, I'm talking about LABarometer, but really all of these panel members are members of the UAS panel. So they receive national surveys, just as all UAS panel members receive national surveys. But then also, if we are interested in asking about LA focused issues, then they receive these LABarometer surveys. And so a little bit of background on our LABarometer surveys. So the goal of these surveys is to monitor social conditions and attitudes in LA County. And we focus on 4 dimensions of well-being in LA: livability, affordability, mobility, and sustainability. And the goal of the survey was to be, we're researchers. We want to understand kind of social issues in LA, and we also want to kind of engage with our community. So it's really a community engaged survey. So when we first decided to develop this survey, we met with all sorts of local stakeholders, nonprofits, people working in government and industry, and through these conversations, we wanted to understand, what are the big problems in LA, and what are the data gaps? Where could people really use higher quality data? And so that's kind of how we arrived at these 4 thematic, or at these 4 themes. And originally our surveys were administered on a quarterly basis, and each of our 4 surveys focused on one of these 4 themes. And in 2022, we switched to a biannual survey frequency, which we found to be a little more sustainable. So yeah, waves 1 and 2, you can see here, have 4 surveys, and then wave 3, we switched to 2 surveys. And our themes are the same. We just kind of combined them and reduced the surveys a bit. So our first survey of wave 3 focused on livability and affordability, and the second focuses on mobility and sustainability. And actually that survey is in the field right now. So just to give you a sense of the types of data that we collect through LABarometer. So our survey on livability and affordability was designed to assess neighborhood quality of life and affordability stress in LA. And it's guided by the principle that a livable community is one where people feel happy, healthy, safe, socially connected, and have access to affordable goods, services, and amenities. So that's how we think about what livability is for people. So we ask people, we try to measure life satisfaction with specific domains of life, neighborhood quality. We ask people about conditions in their neighborhoods, their access to different kinds of resources, We ask about housing security. So, can you afford the housing that you're currently in? How much rent do you pay? We have ways to measure rent burden, your access to affordable health care, your health, how safe do you feel in your community? Have you been the victim of a crime? And we have food insecurity measures. And then we also ask about how socially connected are you? Do you have neighbors that are contacting frequently? Are you participating in neighborhood organizations? And then for people who are parents in our sample, we also ask about their schooling choices and their access to childcare. And so these are just some examples of the kinds of outcomes that we look at in LABarometer. These figures are pulled from I guess our press releases. We do some pretty regular press releases because, as I said, one of our goals is to really engage with our community. So I mentioned that we look at different domains of life satisfaction. So we ask people how satisfied they are with their health, with their finances, family, neighborhood, and these particular domains that are in this figure here are domains where we've seen declines over time in satisfaction. So kind of not surprisingly, I suppose, we see a decline in satisfaction with health, with neighborhood, with family. And then it's kind of interesting. We saw this uptick in financial satisfaction in 2020, but followed by a decline in 2022, kind of to pre-pandemic levels. Another interesting set of results that came out of our affordability survey had to do with housing plans. So we asked people in every survey wave if they plan to move in the next year. Did they plan to move out of their current home into another home in the same neighborhood? Did they plan to change neighborhoods? Did they plan to leave LA? And so there was a lot of concern during the pandemic about there being a mass exodus from cities. And we did actually find a significant increase in the percent of LA residents who indicated that they plan to leave LA in the next year during the pandemic. You can see that from 2020 to 2021. And yeah, right. But in 2022, we see a really interesting decline in that percent. So in 2021, 10% of people indicated plans to leave LA in the next year. But by 2022, that percent had decreased to 3%. And we wanted to kind of better understand, why we see this sharp decline. And we do find that many of the people who in the prior wave had said that they planned to leave LA did actually leave our panel, our LABarometer panel. So we could kind of infer from that perhaps they left LA as well. But then you also see that just in general, there's been a huge decline in the percent of people who plan to move at all. And you could think about, the reasons, financial reasons why that might be the case, the recession, all sorts of reasons. Another really interesting set of findings from our survey. So for some of our surveys, we were interested in doing comparisons with the US, kind of the national average, and also with California, because we do also have an oversample of California residents in the UAS. And so I think this was from our first survey on livability. We asked people in LA and also across the nation how much they pay in rent, and then what's the maximum amount of rent they could pay before they'd have to leave the place that they're currently living in. So what's the maximum amount that they could afford in rent? And so you see here, huge differences between LA, California averages and the national average for what people are paying in rent, which is not, surprising. But then also really big kind of equivalent differences in the maximum amount people believe that they can afford. And we find that these differences remain even when we control for income, because you could expect, okay, maybe people think they can afford more in LA because they're paid more, but actually we don't find that that's the case. And so that just raises, these kinds of comparison raise interesting questions about, what is affordability for people, how people think about their, what they can afford, and, what is affordability stress for people, and how does context shape what affordability stress looks like for people in different parts of the country. So just a little overview of our other survey on mobility and sustainability. So this survey is designed to assess environmental sustainability, transportation behavior, and community resilience. And it's was really inspired by our conversations with various stakeholders in the county and the tremendous effort we see in the county to reduce automobile congestion in LA, which is a huge problem, and increase climate resilience in the face of a global climate crisis. So we have a very long series of questions designed to assess transportation behavior. So we ask people, in the last year, did you drive a car? Did you take public transportation? Did you, use an Uber? We're trying to kind of track people's transportation behaviors, how they feel about public transit. Heat resilience is a big issue in LA. So we have a series of questions trying to understand people's work conditions and home conditions in terms of their exposure to heat, their access to cooling. We ask about air quality, wildfire impacts. Wildfires are a big problem in LA. The health impacts of some of these climate hazards, and also different kind of behaviors that people engage in that, to conserve energy, like, or resources. So pro-environmental behaviors like recycling, or, not using the washing machine, or, different things like that. And then we also ask about disaster preparedness. So just a few examples of some interesting findings from this survey. So in each of our surveys, we asked people if in the last year they had avoided going outside due to air quality concerns from wildfires. And so you can see an increase from 2020 to 2021 in the percent of people who at some point didn't go outside because of a wildfire. 50% of people in LA in 2021 stayed home because they were concerned about air quality. And actually, these results were used by the county in their climate vulnerability assessment. So this kind of data, it was amazing to me actually how much of our data the Chief Sustainability Office in LA used. And I just think it's because there aren't a lot of really good data sets on these kinds of issues, especially at a very local level. And actually tomorrow I'll be presenting on LABarometer as well and talking about, how valuable these kinds of local survey efforts can be, especially when the data is high quality. But you can see here, for some reason the number went away, but in 2023, and this is preliminary data because we're still in the field, but you see a sharp decrease in the percent of people who avoided going outside because of wildfire. And that also very much tracks with our experience in LA that wildfires haven't been as much of a problem this year. Another kind of set of outcomes that we track, transportation behavior, as I mentioned. And so we could really see the effects of the pandemic on transportation behavior in our survey. So you see, use of the private vehicle didn't change all that much pre and post pandemic. But I don't know why it says 2020. I suppose it is because we did collect this data, the first wave of data in 2020, but it was before the pandemic. It was actually right before the pandemic that we fielded our first mobility survey. So that's why it says that. But you see, big declines in the percent of people who walk, who are using ride hailing, using public transportation. And so it'll be interesting over time to see, do we get back to pre-pandemic levels, or is transportation behavior in LA kind of changed forever? There's a lot of talk about the new normal, and this is one way in which we're very curious to see what the new normal is for transportation in LA. And so here are, I just took some snapshots of the UAS website. So there are two ways in which you can access our data. The first is through the UAS website. We have a page on the website, and you can see at the top how you get there. You go to, data overview, then survey data and data products, longitudinal studies, and then under there you can find our survey. And on that web page, you can see an overview of all of our, the descriptions of all of our surveys. You can also find We've developed a longitudinal data set, which is we've combined all of our survey waves so that you can run longitudinal analyses if you're interested in doing that. It currently includes waves 1 and 2 of the survey. Once we finish wave 3, we will add wave 3. And then you can also access all of the individual surveys. We have a list of all of our reports and releases as well in our code books. And then the other way you can access our data is through our website on the CSER website. And so we actually are in the process of revamping the website and updating it to reflect our new survey structure. We'll also be adding a section on our contextual database. You know, Ari mentioned the contextual database that's being developed for the UAS. And we're very much a part of that effort. And we're actually trying to build a database in LA that's at the census block and that incorporates a lot of really rich data sources that are only available at the, you know, locally at the level of LA, data sources that you wouldn't be able to access for a national population. So that's one of the benefits of doing this kind of local work is you can look at some really interesting things. And then we'll also be adding a press room because we have done a lot of press releases and reports and you can access those things there as well. And that's it. So if you have any questions, let me know. You can also email us. And thank you.